What's the overriding emotion after that, Nat?
It's still sort of sinking in. I guess in 2015 there was a real sense of elation and relief almost. This year it's sort of a bit weird. I came here without expectation of winning. I thought Patrick Cripps, Patrick Dangerfield, Marcus Bontempelli all had big years, consistent years. I thought I'd be in the mix, but to win outright, Lachie Neale, an enormous year. Incredibly humbled, and it'll sink in over the next hour.
It's a pretty impressive top 10 now. It's all either all Australians or the current all Australians, and there's a couple of former Brownlow medalists in there as well.
It's a good comment, and I mentioned it out there. The game's in great hands at the moment. We've got a dozen premium top-line players putting out enormous games every week. As a spectator, it's a good time to watch AFL footy.
You touched on it, I think, on the stage, but what has it done for you in terms of your own form and your own preparation?
When you become captain, any sense of building your own game individually gets put to the back seat, and it really is about all the players. I didn't realise that. I always thought that was the sort of player I was, but until I actually took on the role of captaincy and felt the hurt and the expectation that comes with being the figurehead of your team, I didn't realise that role, and I think it's helped me become a more consistent player, because my job isn't to win the footy all the time, it's to get other players started around me and keep their heads up and keep them engaged and in the game. So it's a big challenge. Being a great player is hard. Being a great player and captain is even harder. I've not captained a final yet, and so that's the next step.
Have you spoken to your parents yet? Do you know if they stayed up to watch or they just went to bed early?
I had borrowed a phone. I don't have my phone on me. I borrowed a phone and rang. Dad did pick up. Spoke to him briefly, and then I heard Mum chirp in the background. I'll speak to you tomorrow, Dale. So she's got a sense of humour. I think they did. Yeah, my brother actually came down and watched it as well. So it's a few surprises. They're in Lake Grace. They'll have an early start tomorrow morning, so I dare say they'll be slipping off to bed pretty soon.
How much does that help where home is, and the fact that to them you're just, son, brother, there's, very much it's grounding for you?
Yeah, that's my reality. I don't know anything else, but I sort of won the lottery with where I was born, my parents, stable family, modest income. That afforded me the opportunity to be able to go to private school, play state footy and then get drafted. I've got my family down in Lake Grace and some close mates, Matt Treven and Dougie Clark, who are my humility police. They keep me grounded. They keep me on a road of awareness, make sure I don't get too far off path. So I'm grateful to have those sorts of people in my life.
Do you feel like you've improved as a player in the 4 years since 2015?
I think this is my best year so far. I feel like I've been impactful in all bar 2 games this year. The number one goal coming in was to play all season, and I had an amazing Pilates instructor, Trudy, who found me on the street a week after I tore my hamstring last year and said, "You need to come and see me." And I spent 11 months with her, 2 hours a week every week since November last year, and I got through the year. No soft tissue. I played every game bar 2, which I had a concussion in my elbow. But that becomes the blueprint for how I'm going to prepare for the next 2 or 3 years. She was at a cafe. I was just recently injured. She came up to me, and she's a bit of a spiritual person, and said, "I had this inkling that you were going to hurt yourself last week." And I said, "Well, where were you then?" She said, "If you're up for it, come and see me. No charge, one-on-one Pilates lessons. Give it a go." So I tried it for a month, and 10, 11 months later, I sit here as a Brownlow medalist, so I'm incredibly grateful for her.
That was in Freo?
That was in Freo.
Yeah.
I still haven't paid her yet. I've got to get around to that.
You turn up to 2015 on a cane. You turn up here with your arm in a sling. Is the key to be banged up? Is that the good luck charm for you, Nat? You've been injured a hell of a lot.
I'd suggest there's a correlation there. I'm not enjoying being injured at the end of every off-season. Completely ruins my surf trip plans. But I've had 17 operations in 10 years, 4 shoulder reconstructions. I'm not that durable a player. I wish I was not on the operating table as much, but it is the reality. And asked the other day if I'd change it, if it's worth it. Absolutely, it's worth it.
How much did it actually bother you throughout the whole season?
It bothered me on a couple of games. When I landed heavily on my elbow, it would flare up, fill up with fluid, to the point where in the Hawthorn game I landed on it quite heavily and was getting some contact to it, and I ended up getting an infection during the week. So I don't think I'm completely out of the woods with it yet. The sleeve helped a fair bit, but it's going to be something that I'll probably have to juggle for the next 6 months and hopefully no further.
How do you compare your 2019 season to your Brownlow winning 2015 season? How have you changed as a player?
Don't compare, firstly. It's impossible to. We won the first 9 or 10 games in 2015. I was a ball-hunting midfielder. Now I'm the captain of the club, a club that won 8 games last year, 9 games this year. My role has changed a lot. I'm a lot more sort of wise with how I play. It's no good me going back with the flight or recklessly jumping into contest and getting injured and then not being able to play the next week. So I feel like I'm an older head. Less box office. It's probably not as enjoyable for fans to watch, but I can play more hours footy through the season, which is my most valuable commodity to the team.
You would have to go back a long way for a Brownlow medalist who didn't have his coach in the room with him. You know, the situation at the club. That's, you know, it's obviously an emotional thing for you. Just firstly on Ross, but also secondly the future of the Freo Football Club.
Yeah, Ross and Kirsten Lyon have been incredibly important in my growth as a player and leader. He challenged me a lot along the way, as far back as recently as this year. About December, I was just going through the motions with my training and preparation with the idea of playing more footy towards the back end of the season, and he sort of challenged me to say, you're cruising. I don't think how you're performing and preparing at training is up to standard. I think you've got more in you, and that was enough of a spark to really get going. So it's a hard call. It's a big call from the club to make this, particularly not knowing who the next appointment is going to be. And you won't be able to replace a Ross Lyon. He'll be back in footy circles in years to come, I'm sure, because he's so valuable to the game. And I'm just incredibly grateful for everything he and his family have brought to our footy club and to my life.
You mentioned that you're only the 15th bloke to win it twice. 4 have won it 3 times, but what's it make you feel to get in that company? It's not many people who have like 95 odd years of Brownlows.
Yeah, it's a little bit surreal at the moment. The Brownlow's a weird one because I don't have a premiership medal, so I'd hate to be sitting at the end of my career with 2 or maybe 3 Brownlows and no premiership. I'd trade these in a heartbeat just for the opportunity to be able to play another grand final. And any player, I think, in the competition, if you asked them that question, would say the same thing. I'm so jealous of the teams that get to compete this weekend. But all I can do is play as well as I can and see what comes with it. But let's hope that the next medal around my neck is a premiership medal.
You mentioned Danger on stage, and he was gutted after Friday night.
Yeah.
You would have read those comments and gone, know exactly what you're talking about.
I didn't read the comments, but I know how he feels. A player of his stature and what he's brought to our game. He's the president of our Players Association. He's achieved everything you can in footy other than playing in and winning a grand final. And when you play for 10 years and you have big battles against players like Paddy and Joel Selwood and Dustin Martin, you develop a real sense of respect for those players and you want to see them go on and achieve their dreams and goals, as I want to see Lachie Neale win a premiership. So I know the feeling that he felt. Geelong aren't done by any stretch, and I wish them all the best next year, but right now the emotion in his head and the 2 teams that lost on the weekend is hard to describe unless you've actually stepped into the arena and been vulnerable like they have.
Do you have any idea of who you want to coach Freo? Do you have any thoughts on it?
I've got a few thoughts. I've been part of the process so far. There's a bit of a short list being assembled. Peter Bell has kept me in the loop as much as is appropriate. As a captain and player, I can't wag the dog. I can't be making any halo calls to get anyone in, but it's important that I get on board really quickly with whoever our senior coach becomes. And it's also important for a player like David Mundy, our most senior player, that he takes up that role as a mentor and assistant coach almost while still being a player.
Do you know how long it is before you'll be announcing it?
Don't know.
And on that, how long do you think before Freo can become the team that you want it to be? How long is that process going to take from where you are now?
I didn't bring my crystal ball,
Yeah.
which is a Ross Lyon favourite, but we won 8 games last year. We won 9 games this year. We'll have relatively the same list. I told Brad Hill before tonight that if I won, he wasn't allowed to leave. So please put that in the papers and hold him to that. I have no intention of going backwards for a couple of years before we regather. We won 9 games this year. I think we can pick up where we left off. We beat 3 of the 4 prelim finalists, and 2 of them we beat on the road. Giants and Collingwood we beat away. So we need to iron out some kinks to get some consistency in our team, but our best footy can beat anyone.